Hi, I'm Dr. David Dobson. Welcome to Conversations. Today, my guest is Dr. Cheryl-lyn Ngoh. Cheryl is an assistant professor of marketing at California Polytechnic State University and San Luis Obispo. She obtained her PhD in marketing from Kent State University. Today, we will discuss her PhD research. It's a great pleasure to have you on my show, Cheryl.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Your PhD research looks into the effect of retailer channel decision on consumer shopping behavior. Please tell what this project was about.
So that's a really good question. So my overall research interest is in multi-channel, omni-channel retailing, consumers' channel choice, how does consumer make decisions? So that's kind of my overall overarching research interest.
Yeah.
And I kind of want to start, because we're talking about the PhD journey, right? So I started around, 2018. And back when you start your PhD, you don't really know what you want to do. So, you start reading papers, you kind of get interested. And I remember reading, several strategy related papers about multi-channel retailing, the research shopper phenomenon, store channel eliminations. There weren't too many papers back then about store channel eliminations, but that was really interesting to me. And then I remember reading an article that Toys R Us closed, or Toys R Us was closing, that was like, I think in 2018 or late 2018, early 2019, the news hit that Toys R Us was closing all their stores. And then, there's no more stores and everyone would just have to go online. And then JCPenney was also closing a lot of stores. So that was very interesting to me because I came from Malaysia and the shopping behavior is like, you go online, you go to shopping malls, nobody shops online. Nobody shops online.
Yeah, I know. When the Toys R Us was closing, I was so shocked because I had so many good memories of Toys R Us, buying toys for my son and the books.
Exactly. That was kind of my thought too, because we loved going to Toys R Us, when we were growing up, and my mom would also only buy things at Toys R Us, So then that kind of prompted me to think like, well, how would people like my mom react, when such a news comes out, like, Toys R Us is closing their store, like how do you feel, like, would they be mad about it? I imagine my mom would have been, shocked and also like, I'll never buy anything else, something like that. So that was a motivation for my research. So yeah, and also like I like shopping. I like, in-store shopping, online shopping. So that was a motivation to me as well. So overall, that's kind of where I got the motivation from. And I do enjoy writing research like that. And I think, COVID-19, the phenomenon of COVID-19 was interesting. And I want to say, it worked kind of in my favor as well, just because the retail environment. I was, looking at how the retail environment changes. And at that time, in my PhD, I was working on like store channel eliminations. So then COVID-19 kind of was, like more of a motivation, because then more stores closed and people just had to shift online. People who were hesitant to shift online, they had to learn to shop online. You hear the older demographics having to shop online now, just because. So I think it's a fascinating topic because retail environment is constantly changing. Like something that happened tomorrow and then behaviors change drastically. So I do think it's a very interesting field of research. At least this is what motivates me.
I remember that when things started moving to online, and I also felt that it also kind of forced upon many consumers, because I don't think we were prepared. And if the few stores who were open, there were big lineup. You know what I mean? Like, so you thought, should we line up for hours or you just go online and buy stuff? You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So very interesting topic indeed. So Cheryl, what was your research methodology for this project?
So I really was interested in a couple of research questions. So I wanted to see how behaviors changed. So part of it was, doing like a multi-channel consumer segmentation project where I wanted to see how different segments of consumers change their shopping behavior across different phases of pre and during COVID-19. So that was one of the research objectives. And then the other one was to look at how they feel, what are the emotions that are evoked from the retail environment changes, and how that subsequently impacts their shopping behavior. So that was like the research objectives. And most of the methodology I apply is scenario-based experiments, quantitative surveys. And typically these methods that I, choose for the research, they kind of depend on the research objectives, and the appropriateness of those. But I think, for at least for the methodologies that I use, they're those.
Yeah, very, very nice. So in your first essay, because you did two essays for your PhD, you study consumers' emotions. You already mentioned about them, and more specifically, you looked into their hope and fear emotions toward the retail environment. Can you share what you learned from your experiment?
Yeah, absolutely. So I thought it was, fascinating to explore how consumers react or how they feel based on the changes. And also, like McKinsey and Company, they did a survey, US consumers, and they did find that there are people who are hopeful, and people who are, fearful that the economy will have a negative lasting effect, So we do see that happening, people are feeling this way. So then, I wanted to do research to see, well, really how, does the environment evoke, hope and fear, and then how does that impact, their shopping behaviors, and then look at moderators, mediators. So and also, a lot of research in our field in retailing and marketing typically has looked at negative emotions, which isn't surprising, right? Because a lot of people feel a lot of negative emotions from COVID-19, like fear, anxiety, depression, things like that. But then an interesting question comes is like, can people feel positive emotions? I mean, you can be optimistic, right? So we wanted to see how, hope and fear, whether they would impact where you shop. So, we looked at subjective norms. So we wanted to see, given the changes in shopping behavior, because of COVID-19 as well, there's been like, this shift to shop online, because it's safer and things like that. So we wanted to see how, consumer subjective norms, moderates that relationship. But we also wanted to see, well, what explains, their emotions and their likelihood to shop in store. And we looked at internal locus of control. So how much, consumer perceives they have control over their actions, which kind of might explain, how they feel and how they cope with certain things. So whether they, feel hopeful or fearful, and then how that impact, how much control they have kind of explains this. So we did do two scenario-based studies. So like I kind of mentioned in the previous one, we did two scenario-based studies, and this was appropriate because we wanted to stimulate how varying emotions and normative situations influence consumer decisions based on their in-store shopping behavior. That typically would be, a bit harder or a bit more challenging to do in real life, but not saying that you shouldn't do a field experiment, but, yeah. So we did two studies, and so we did a bunch of analyses, independent t-tests, all that fun stuff. So, so the summary of results, at least, let me just jump to that, So we did find that hopeful consumers are more likely to shop in store than fearful consumers. And this kind of matches with a lot of the anecdotes, about fearful consumers. A lot of research has shown that, right? Like fearful consumers more likely to shop in store, right? So we do find support for this finding, and it does support a lot of the anecdotes and previous research. And so what's interesting also, we found that specifically, so subjective norms attenuates the negative effect of fearful consumers and their likelihood to shop in store. So we did find that, fearful consumers are less likely to shop in store. And when there is peer pressure to shop online, they are even less likely because they're, there's peer pressure. There is because there is that feeling of uncertainty, right? The environment, because the retail environment is so uncertain. So there is that feeling of wanting to fit in, you know, and like seeking for social approval, seeking for a sense of security. So, you know, they these fearful consumers, they tend to you know, look towards their, you know, social subjective norms, you know, in terms of where to shop. So and we found that this is also explained by decreased internal locus of control, because, you know, they do feel that there is some insecurity, their own decisions or their own actions might not help them feel secure. So then, you know, decreased levels of this does explain that negative relationship.
Right.
Yeah.
So did you find this emotion has a somewhat impact depending on the demographic, perhaps younger consumer versus older consumer? Any distinction, or it doesn't really matter?
That is interesting. Our sample, I remember it's quite diverse. Like the first sample was more younger, I would say, and then the other sample was more on the older side. So I kind of want to say that the results were fairly similar. So I would say that probably not that much, I want to say, but I think, you know, if we wanted to look more in depth, I think, you know, that would be thing to see. But from what the results that I have, and just thinking about the demographics and the results, you know.
What was your average age for your subject in your experiment?
I think I don't remember right now, but I think the average age sample for the first sample was the younger side, maybe less than 30, I want to say, or 30 something. Yeah.
Okay. That's good.
Yeah.
Very good. I want to ask you about your second essay. In this study, you did consumer segmentation to understand consumer channel choices. Can you share a little bit about this study? Segmentation sounds exciting.
Yes. No, it is very exciting. I'll tell you. I had a lot of fun with this paper, seriously. So the goal of this research was actually to explore, like, you know, kind of like I said, like how segments, multi-channel consumer segments change. And this kind of stems back from multi-channel retailing, you know, where there's so many descriptions about consumers, and consumers are multi-channel, you know, they shop in store, shop online, all those kind of things. So I want to see how these segments change across phases of store channel elimination. So, you know, back then in my PhD, I was interested in store channel elimination. So then, you know, because of COVID, I kind of alluded in the, you know, the intro. So we wanted to see, you know, when there was less store eliminations and then when there's more store elimination. So like during COVID-19. Given the effects of, you know, the changes in the retail environment, rapid store closure, shift in online shopping, this kind of thing. So, you know, this paper was a lot of fun. During my doctoral journey, you know, prior to that, when I did my MBA, I had learned how to do clustering analysis using Python. So it wasn't like super new to me. I knew how to do it. But then, you know, I was reading a lot of papers, and because of the nature of my data, I had learned about latent profile analysis.
Oh, nice.
So you know, a lot of the papers, they use latent cluster you know, analysis. And so I think that, you know, because of the nature of my survey, the nature of the data, that tends to be more continuous variables. So I learned about latent profile analysis that was more appropriate when your survey is consistently, not consistently, but, you know, majority of it is more continuous variables. So I had learned how to do latent profile analysis. I spent sleepless nights trying to figure out how to, you know, code in R, but it was worth it. That's why I say it was so much fun, because it really was so much fun. Like
so much learning going on here.
It was a very fun learning experience, and now, you know, obviously I can confidently say I can do latent profile analysis in R.
Cool.
Yeah, so the framework, you know, of this paper was to look at whether there were changes in multi-channel consumer segments. And then I also wanted to see, well, what are some factors that explain the segments? You know? So I applied the MOA framework, so McKinney's paper, motivation, opportunity, and ability framework. I also looked at attachment. I looked at psychographic and demographic variables. And so looking at what changes, looking at what factors describe, and also trying to see if we can predict channel switching behavior.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So,
cool.
You know, we wanted to see if we can try to predict where they would go, you know, where segment membership, you know, whether it impacts switching behavior. So yeah, the lane profile analysis was really fun. So I'll tell you the summary of the results, based on the lane profile analysis and all the things we did. So I did find that there are, 6 multi-channel consumer segments. And I could tell you like a lit review of, all the segmentation papers and stuff, but that's for another day, I guess. But yeah, so I found like there are 6 updated, up to date, I guess, consumer segments based on their in-store and online shopping behaviors pre and during COVID-19. I did find that there were 3 broad categories. So a lot of the research in segmentation looks at, categories of consumers. So I did find that there were 3 broad categories. So there are store-focused consumers, online-focused consumers, and multi-channel consumers, So we did find that there were 3 broad categories, but they shifted in terms of like pre and during COVID-19. So like you see, one segment who was like store-focused consumer pre-COVID, and then during COVID, they shifted more towards online. So we did see like, a shift in some of the segments. But what was also very interesting was that there were a couple of segments that were still willing to shop in store. So they were store focused and they remained store focused. So that kind of indicated that, there are consumers who are still willing to shop in store, and that, there's value for retailers in terms of like maintaining and keeping a store presence at least. And also, I did find that several factors, like motivation, so utilitarian and hedonic shopping motivation does impact where you go, opportunity, so like time, how much time the consumer has, and physical opportunity, like if they have a car, laptop, things like that. And then like the ability to actually shop does describe the segments differently. And the last thing that we did was we tried to predict channel switching behavior. And I guess, I mean, maybe it's not too surprising, but we found that most of the segments were actually more likely to switch to a competitor store channel. So let me back up a little bit. So we actually asked it was a choice model. So like, choose where you would go the next time that you shop if, the retailer closed the store. So we had a competitor's online store, competitor store channel, the focal retailers online. Those are the choices. And most of the segments actually said that they were more likely to switch to a competitor store channel than to go to a focal retailer's online location or a different store location.
Wow, why does that?
Yeah. That's really interesting. Well, this was more of a we did a series of linear regressions. So we suspect it's because of all the motivations, like different motivations. Maybe like opportunity, time, and also there could be other things as well that we didn't really look at. So I think that was a really interesting one. And then if we can for future research, but
for sure,
but that was kind of interesting because that again kind of suggested that that consumers do want to go to stores. It could also have indicated that consumers might have felt some sort of reactance. So in the literature, actually, in like technology adoption, consumers actually feel reactance when they're forced to adopt something that they don't want to adopt, or when they're told to do something they don't want to do. So there could have been something like reactance in play. We did not test for this in this paper. In my other paper, we did find it. But yeah, for this one, it kind of just maybe suggested, but it does support the notion that physical stores does have value.
Very nice. So the participant for your segmentation study, were they still during the COVID time, or the COVID was almost like ending, or after the post-COVID survey?
Yes. So this one actually we did it during COVID. So yeah, so it was the sample, I think it was 2020, I want to say.
So
about
COVID time,
late 2019, early 2020. So that was when there was still kind of that pre-COVID, but still remember their pre-COVID, and then during COVID-19. So we saw the changes in behavior. And I guess let me clarify, like the first essay. So the first essay, this was we wanted to go beyond the pandemic. We wanted to go beyond COVID-19. So we wanted to see like the effects of the retail environment that was caused by like COVID, inflation. So our sample is fairly newer for essay one. So that one was done closer towards 2022, I want to say.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
So Cheryl, based on your research, and obviously there are two interesting studies you've done, what are the practical implications to consumers and retailers?
Yeah. So, for essay one at least, because we looked at fear and hope, and the way that we conducted the study was we came up with a hypothetical newspaper article that was meant to evoke hope or fear. So, the implications for that, for retailers at least, is that, they can apply different hope and fear-focused marketing communications, as an effort to encourage in-store and online shopping behavior. So based on our findings, we did find like hopeful consumers more likely to shop in store, fearful consumers less likely to shop in store. So, retailers can use either like a hope-focused communication, like focusing on positive experiences and favorable shopping experiences that could encourage consumers to shop in store. And then for fear, on the other hand, because they're less likely to shop in store, so retailers could then use fear focused communication by trying to inculcate like a sense of security, sense of certainty, because that's what we found is that because there's lack of certainty, lack of security, there's a need to follow what others do because you need to feel that sense of security. So maybe communicating, that there is a sense of security, certainty when you shop online, and maybe some efforts to increase perceived control, like maybe emphasizing ease of shopping online to boost confidence, because maybe that's what's stopping them from shopping in store or online. So that's kind of the recommendations for retailers. And this way also maybe might encourage consumers to switch to the local retailers online channel and in store as well. For SA2, we did find that there were segments of consumers who were willing to shop in store. So, the recommendation would be, for managers would be to also consider, these different segments, that there are strong segments of, consumers who are still willing to shop in store, and, they're motivated by different things like utilitarian and hedonic. So, there is value to maintaining them, but you just have to, for retailers and managers at least, really understanding what motivates them. That's, part of why the research, we look at the factors that motivates. So looking at what motivates them. And so one of the segments, I remember it was store-focused consumers, and they were motivated by utilitarian motivation. So part of it was, trying to emphasize on that motivation, try to utilize that, and encourage consumers to shop in store.
So Cheryl, now when you did your research, that was like during COVID time. Now we passed COVID time. Thank God for that.
Yeah, I know.
Like over 2 years. So how do you notice I know you haven't done any data collection, but based upon your own observation, perhaps anecdotally, how do you notice consumer behavior now? From your research and now because now we see that there's a more opens of stores. Of course, there's a big presence of online retailer, but there's also people start going to the stores and life look like back to normal.
Right. Yeah, no. I think it's really fascinating. Like I've, done a couple of studies here and there, maybe not related to the two essays, but other essays. A lot of things have changed. Like, in the past, like online channel adoption, like I said, right? So when like previous research showed that when you force consumers to adopt to a technology like, online channels, they react negatively. They develop reactants, and then because of that, they feel betrayed, and then they shop elsewhere. They get angry and they're like, I don't like this retailer, I'm just shop elsewhere, I'm mad. You're like, you're forcing me to shop online. I don't like it. Let's go elsewhere. And COVID-19 really changed a lot of consumers' normal, I guess I want to say, like, pre-COVID behavior. And I remember doing a study, and we did exactly the same thing, pre-COVID, same study, and we found that reactants had no effect. So I guess, people got used to it, like there's learning theory as well, where they start to learn something, they get used to it, then they adopt it. Shopping behaviors are also very different now. Switching behaviors are very different. But what we do see is that people are still willing to shop in store. Even in my other research, when we did a very not similar research, but also kind of similar, looking at different preferences. We also did find that there were consumers who were likely to switch to a competitor store. So we did kind of like a similar one where we asked them, if your preferred retailer closed its store, where would you go? It was surprising. We did find that people still were willing to shop at a competitor's, physical location. So I do see, like there is still value. People still are willing to go back. And even there's anecdotes out there, from news articles that there are consumers who are willing to go back. And also, the retail formats have changed a lot because of COVID. So you have delivery, you have DoorDash, then you have buy and pick up, and then you have buy and return, those kind of things. So the format of retailers have shifted as well, which also has made things, either convenient or inconvenient for consumers. So I do think there's a lot of really cool research that you could do in this area, because it's really shifting.
I think that perhaps leads to my next question. A good segue is, what is your advice to researchers who wish to continue this type of similar study?
Yeah, like I said, I think it's a fascinating area of research. I could go on and on, but like there's much to be explored. I think, like I said, there's a lot of different retailer formats, and they're up in the rise. Like you have pop-ups, and then I've seen before, like there's, like a physical space, and you just have like multiple entrepreneurs, multiple pop-ups in that one place, so it's like a retailer, but not a retailer. So then, that would be interesting to see how that, the implications of that, like the rise of small businesses, and then there's like quiet luxury retailers, compared to like the luxury retailers that we know. So there's a lot of different retail formats. I think it'll be really interesting as avenues of research. And also like with the rise of AI. I think that would be really interesting to consider as well, like how AI may play a role in encouraging or even discouraging consumers from shopping in store and online. That's I guess like that's a newer area of research, like looking at how like AI used in stores or online, different formats, AI voice technologies, things like that, So I'm pretty sure some researchers are, already looking at these kind of things, but I think it'd be interesting,
Yeah. I was going over your dissertation, which is basically very nicely written. So in your dissertation acknowledgement, you indicated that your faith was very important in navigating your doctoral journey. So I thought perhaps you can share a little bit about with us.
Yes, I love that. I love that you asked this question. So I feel that it is important to remain grounded in what you believe. So in my experience, the doctoral journey is very daunting. There's a lot of expectations, and sometimes it can be a lonely one. And it's just a different type of loneliness. Like you might have a significant other, you might have family, but it's kind of like that internal struggle that you only know, that kind of loneliness. So there were times when I felt like, like I have imposter syndrome, which I feel like most PhDs or even junior faculty still feel that. You don't really belong in the program. You should be kicked out 10 years ago. Then you get unfairly treated. Then you start doubting yourself, that kind of thing. But I really do believe that what kept me going was my faith in God. And just believing in his promises for me, that gave me the hope, right? Hope research. So like gave me the hope, the strength, and also the wisdom that I needed to carry on each day and do all things. So I mean, there were ups and downs. There's times that I really struggled during COVID, especially because that time when I was in the PhD program, it significantly disrupted the journey. Like we had to shift online, and then there was funding problems, so we got cut from RA jobs and all that stuff. So it was it was a struggle, and so like just having something that I can, believe in, that I know is not going to fail me. That really helped me push me through. So I prayed a lot. I meditated on God's word a lot. I do feel very blessed though, because, despite the ups and downs, I did enjoy my PhD journey. It was a truly enjoyable experience. You can kind of tell from my research, I could talk all day, so I do feel very blessed. I learned so much and I also gained so much from there. And I guess that helped me to be a, better researcher and an educator as well. So yeah, so I guess, like my advice, I guess, I don't know, but yeah, at least like, it's important to remain grounded in what you believe.
Yeah. Thank you for your time, Cheryl-lyn. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.